Welcome to everyone who has joined us in the room today. We note many of you are from the UK, many from South Africa, and we have many from further afield as well. Pleased you've been able to join us for what will be a very interesting hour. We expect it to be very informative, and we expect it to be very energizing. I'm Sharon Constanson. I'm your host for the webinar. I'm the chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce based here in the UK. This webinar features the Solidarity Fund and will address the work that they've achieved since they were formed in March. They were formed for the purpose of the COVID-19 crisis in South Africa to support the needs of individuals in the country. We are here to hear about what they have achieved, what they're focused on, and what their future plans are for the fund. Before we begin with the conversation with Palesa, I would like to remind attendees that we will all be walking over the weekend at the end of the month. The bank holiday weekend in South Africa, therefore a 3-day weekend. So for 3 days, we are calling on South Africans globally to come together to walk, run, hike, jog, anything on foot, even while you're playing golf, cricket, or tennis, and to log their miles with us. The reason we want to do that is we want to create a spirit of togetherness globally for that weekend as we collate our steps, which will effectively travel all of us from Cape Town to Beitbridge and back to Cape Town. You will need to register for the event, and the website I will put up in the chat line for you shortly for this global challenge, which will be 2,414 miles is what we want to achieve as a minimum, which is equal to the distance of traveling from Cape Town to Beitbridge and back to Cape Town. This is the equivalent of traveling across the UK from north to south 4 times. We're looking for individuals who are participating in this walk to either collect sponsorship per mile from their friends and family and colleagues, to make a donation themselves, or just walk. Don't do anything more than just walk with us. You don't have to give us money. We know it's difficult times at the moment, but maybe get a whole bunch of your friends to walk as well, and they make a small donation. This is really going to be very much a numbers game for us to achieve for the Solidarity Fund what we wish to achieve as a chamber. There is a Q&A button on the site for you. Any questions you put there, I will collate and put to the panel at the end. But we're going to start the conversation with Pamela Madumo as our moderator. She is the founder of and CEO of a Johannesburg-based PR firm called Vuma Reputation Management. And we've been working closely with them in this endeavor over the last weeks. Palesa will initially chat with Adrian Enthoven, who is Deputy Chairman of the Solidarity Fund and Executive Chairman of Yellowwoods, which is a European-based private investment firm. Also, in the first half, we'll be chatting to Alef Meulenberg, and Alef is CEO of Afrika Tikkun, which is an organization that's been involved in the on-the-ground work for the Solidarity Fund. Second part of our conversation, Palesa will be chatting to our sporting heroes, and that is Lucas Radebe, who is a footballer from Leeds United Football Club and Bafana, and Springbok rugby hero Andre Snyman. The ambassadors will share with us why they are part of this, why they are walking, what they're going to be doing it for, and how you can join with them to achieve our objectives. Without any further ado, Palesa, I shall hand over to you to take us all together over a journey for another hour. Thank you very much. All over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Thanks for that warm welcome. As mentioned, my name is Palesa Madumo, and I'm Chief Executive Officer of Vuma Reputation Management, which is a public relations and reputation management consultancy based in sunny South Africa, Johannesburg. In fact, South Africa is currently in level 2 lockdown, which means for the first time in a very long time, we can start to enjoy different tourist attractions in our country that have actually been shut down for the last 5 months. So I think everybody's looking forward to this weekend. I also think it's an awesome time because at the end of this month, as Sharon mentioned, we will be doing the Solidarity Walk, and that is in partnership with the South African Chamber of Commerce. In fact, they're bringing the Solidarity Walk to you. However, it is through the Solidarity Fund that we will be doing the fundraising, and I'm very happy to be chatting to Adrian today So I'm going to kick off with that and just get a bit of background from you, Adrian. If you could put, there you are. Awesome. Thanks. We'll also be talking to Alef, so we'll be in conversation for the next 20 or so minutes. And I'm actually going to time myself. So, we first heard, Adrian, of the Solidarity Fund in March, and that was in response to the advent of COVID-19 globally. But it was decided to be launched in South Africa. And I just wanted to find out from you what the purpose of it was and what the specific mandate of the Solidarity Fund is.
Thanks very much, Palesa, and thanks, Sharon, for hosting us again on this webinar. The Solidarity Fund was initiated to unite all of South Africa in the fight against COVID-19. It was set up as an independent entity, and I think this is very important to stress for everyone because there's been a lot of confusion. A lot of people think that the Solidarity Fund is part of government. It's one of the government funds that's caught up in PPE corruption and all the rest of it. But actually, it's an entirely separate independent entity. It's a separate not-for-profit company. It was established by business and government together with the idea that it would create a single initiative to help mobilize resources in society, mobilize South Africans, both to contribute personally and to be part of the fight against COVID-19, but also to help with the necessary kind of behavioral changes that would be needed as we move through the crisis. So the fund was set up with pro bono support from individuals and businesses. It has an independent board, mainly of business people, but also it has 2 ministers on the board. It has someone from civil society, someone from the trade union movement. So it's an organization that represents all of society, but it's maintained with the highest governance principles of the private sector. And we take our responsibility of managing resources on behalf of all South Africans. We have had over 300,000 South Africans contribute to us, over 2,200 companies and trusts. So managing those funds and making sure that we have the biggest possible impact that we can have on this crisis is obviously kind of front and center for us.
Okay, I think that's extremely important, and congratulations for that. So far, the fund has raised over 3 billion rand and actually distributed over 280 food parcels. Could you tell us a little bit more in terms of the impact that the fund has had thus far?
So it's 280,000 food parcels.
Sorry.
So the 3 areas that the fund chose to focus on were first, supporting the national health response. So obviously, the health crisis was critical, and the idea of the fund was that we could be an agile, rapid response vehicle. It was taking government a while to mobilize their support for the health sector. So the fund stepped in very quickly, and there were 4 areas that we've been involved in the health side. The one is in personal protective equipment, PPE. We spent almost 1 billion rand, not only for state doctors and nurses, but also for community healthcare workers working in the NGO sector. We had a very significant effort to support the NHLS and the national testing program, about 360 million rand. Also supporting the academic hospitals as they stepped up to provide additional testing capacity to support the NHLS. And also more recently, the Independent Community Pharmacy Association to help support with the testing of medical workers. The third area in the health response was around ventilators, in particular, very significant investment in the local manufacture of 18,000 CPAP machines. These are oxygen support machines that are critically needed. We have already 1,000 of these. The initiative happened in July. We already have 1,000 of these in the field, and all 18,000 are due to be delivered and in operation by the end of September. And then the third area was, critical medical equipment for some of the provinces that were experienced their crisis very early on, Gauteng, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape. So very significant investment in helping support the health response using our kind of rapid, agile ability. And also to say that all of our procurement happened in partnership with Business for South Africa's procurement infrastructure. So, we weren't involved at all or caught up at all in the kind of, the PPE corruption scandals that you see. This was a very professionally and well-managed PPE procurement program. The second area of focus for us has been in the humanitarian, and you mentioned the food relief effort. We got in very early with a national response to provide food parcels to 280,000 families. We're now busy with a follow-up to that with 135,000 food vouchers and also 35,000 input vouchers for small-scale farmers to help boost food production. So that is in the kind of humanitarian space, and we also stepped in to deal with another significant humanitarian crisis, and that is in the area of gender-based violence, to support the National Command, GBV Command Council, the National Shelter Movement, and the Tutuzela care centers. And then finally, the third leg of our campaign was a solidarity campaign. And this was really about, reaching all South Africans, demystifying, what this virus was about. We've been operating in radio stations, television channels, billboards, a massive national campaign. We've reached 34 million South Africans. And really now, as the economy opens up, it's really important that we drive the behavioral changes needed, mask wearing, physical distancing, and so on. So those are the three kind of elements of our campaign. And we've had very significant impact. We've spent around 2/3 of our, 3/4 of our funds to date. And that was always the idea, to front end the investments. The money we received was really to address the crisis. And we really kind of stepped in very early and dispersed funds to try and have the biggest impact we could have in the kind of early stages of the crisis.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think this is a good time to bring in Alef. And Alef, perhaps as a humanitarian, maybe you can tell us why it's important to have a fund such as the Solidarity Fund, particularly in a country like South Africa.
Palesa, thank you so much. And again, also thank you, Sharon, for hosting this webinar. From a humanitarian point of view, particularly from a South African context, being still one of the most unequal countries in the world, I think when COVID hit, there were a lot of people who wanted to contribute, people and companies alike. And the Solidarity Fund provided a platform or an organization where they could make a contribution like that, where there's a lot of social capital in the fund, where they can reach out to organizations such as Afrika Tikkun from a food relief point of view, that can help with the immediate need in the communities underground to provide relief where necessary. Because a lot of people are living hand to mouth. And when there's no money coming into hands, it immediately impacts from a hunger and from a nutritional point of view. And by being so agile and by moving so quickly with the Solidarity Fund, we, as one of the implementing partners, we've been able to, within weeks of the pandemic, distributing the necessary food. So I think that's why it was really important for such a platform to be set up.
Fantastic. And in terms of your work that you've been doing hand in hand with the Solidarity Fund, what are some of the stories or success stories or even your experience on the ground, that you've come across?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, and I must commend my team on it as well, is we had to pivot our organization quite significantly. We are an organization that focuses on sustainable developments, and we call it from cradle to career. And within weeks, we said, look, we have to focus on this, on the pandemic and on the results, that the consequences of the pandemic in our communities, and really shift from a holistic developmental approach towards a emergency relief program. Some of the stories, and one of the biggest stories for us, is that we were able to distribute 24,000 food parcels in a time space of 2 to 3 weeks. That's within our communities in Gauteng and the Western Cape. One of the coolest stories that I've seen come around is that there was a go-go coming for a food parcel. And those food parcels are not light. And initially we were distributing through our centers. And she came to collect a food parcel at one of our centers, and she couldn't carry it. And with the risk, there's always police available at the sites. And 2 police officers helped carry her food parcel back to her place, whereas she didn't have anything beforehand. Now she had a food to feed herself and her family for a month. But it did show some of the collaborative responses in the community, and particularly also in that case, a shout out to the men and women in blue who helped someone in need. But there are tons of those type of stories of people who really didn't know what to do, didn't have food or or any means to buy food, and were helped through a food parcel in this time. So I think that was just one of the examples that stood out for me.
Sure, that's fantastic. And what a wonderful story. I think actually we've seen a lot of those stories across the country with communities coming together to help each other and to help different people. And I think even the Solidarity Fund itself, I know as individuals, people can contribute to the fund as well as organizations. So it's really sort of that mechanism that has brought the country together to create change together. So, Adrian, you spoke a lot about corporate governance and also the independence of the fund itself. Who are some of the partners that you work with in terms of monitoring, checking and validating delivery and assistance to households across the country?
So, I mean, we have a number of partners. I mean, firstly, just to say, Palesa, there are probably 80 people who work full-time at the fund or pro bono. I mean, all these services provided by all the companies that support the fund have been pro bono. We haven't spent a single cent in the last 6 or 7 months since we started on anything but kind of, direct impact initiatives that I described. The organization, we've got a number of companies that support us. I mean, we have Edward Nathan Sonnenbergs who do all the legal support for us. Deloitte are external auditors. Old Mutual do our fund administration. Inside the organization, we have EY who, support with a lot of the operational and organizational infrastructure. So there are a number of companies there are probably 15 companies in total that are providing these kind of, services to us. We have an internal audit team. And as I said early on, we take the responsibility of, spending this money with huge seriousness and make sure that the governance processes we follow of the highest possible standard. I mean, there have been, I think, some valid criticisms of, the extent of disclosure that we've had on our website about some of our activities. And I think that's really just a function of time. I mean, we're completely committed to total transparency about where all our money is coming from and where it gets spent, and to account for all of that and the impact that we have to all of our stakeholders. I mean, we're a fund that is accountable and responsible to all of South Africa and all South Africans. But because we kind of in process and, this team of people, I tell you, I mean, people are working 12, 14 hours a day on trying, all the things that I described. Just the process of identifying these beneficiaries, the contracting, the management of these processes is hugely time intensive. But absolutely, there will be full accountability for where all the funds have been spent, and also full and we have sought to do this through our website. Full disclosure as to how we make our decisions. How decisions are made as to where funds are prioritized.
I have seen on your website that you've actually got sort of it's not a timer, but something that basically displays how much you've raised thus far and the areas that you've actually impacted. So I think that is also a step in terms of transparency and gives people comfort, because I know some of the activities have also been staff members from different organizations sort of clubbing together as part of their salary packages to donate to the fund. So I think overall, you have done quite a great job in terms of transparency. And it is a pity that, you are met with some of the fake news or some of the associations that come with the PP scandals that we're currently experiencing in the country. I think just to sort of tie that matter up and put it to rest, how do you plan to continue to remain transparent as an organization? And how do you deal with the fake news that comes about when it comes to scandal and corruption in South Africa?
I mean, it's very difficult, Palesa. I mean, we try and respond as best we can. I think one of the challenges we faced is that whenever there's a scandal, a government scandal, reference is made to government solidarity funds, in small s, small f, and that is, immediately associated with us. And it's very hard to respond to all of these issues. In addition to that, often you've got like incorrect titles of articles. And whenever we see this, we try and correct it. We're in social media. I mean, personally, I phone journalists and, when they make these mistakes, and often these mistakes are kind of made not, there's no ill intent. I mean, it's just a lack of understanding of the distinction and the fact that we are kind of independent. So we try to emphasize that whenever we get the opportunity, but it is difficult. I think it's also difficult because, there's such anger about, in particular, corruption related to COVID efforts. And so we kind of get caught up in that anger, unfortunately. But it is something that we intend to do. I mean, one of the things that I think we are intending to do is to accelerate the reporting on where all the money is going, so that people can see, who we contracted to, what was spent with them, what is the impact that we've had. I mean, we have nothing to hide on any of this stuff. So, it really has just been a question of committing resources to making sure we do that, and also, presenting that in a way which is accessible for people, so that you don't just have hundreds of pages of reports that people have to wade through. Make it very accessible so people can really look at it and understand it very easily.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So you mentioned gender-based violence earlier on, and I think maybe, Alef, if you could tackle this one. I just wanted to find out, it is Women's Month in South Africa. Last night, in fact, I heard of a term called she session, which was the first time I was hearing it. And what it implies is how women globally are affected by the recession or recessions. And, front and center of what we're talking about right now is the women of South Africa who are affected by, COVID-19 and who are part of that community that is adversely affected by COVID-19. But on top of it all, we've got a crisis, a gender-based violence crisis in the country. How has your organization, Afrika Tikkun, been impacted by this, or how do you deal with this? And also in your partnership with Solidarity Fund?
But I think there are two elements to this. The first element is what we as an organization, is kind of our core, is we aim to get young people into sustainable jobs, or into entrepreneurship opportunities, self-employment. And the fact is still that the people group that needs that the most, because they suffer the most from unemployment, is Black women particularly. So for us, that's a significant group that we try to help by our Creative to Career model, by ensuring that they have access to job opportunities, to learnerships, to we're currently starting an agripreneurship program. But again, the emphasis should lie on how can we get women into those kind of sectors, right? So the idea of that is to really empower women, and we have it's called an empowerment program, to ensure that women become less vulnerable from a gender-based violence point of view. Secondly, there's also a big element of awareness in this for both men and women. And what we have is a YouTube channel for both young men and young women, where they address things around gender and also things around gender-based violence. What does it mean? Like when you say no as a guy, what does it mean? How do you respond to that? And as a woman, how are you empowered to say no? And particularly around things like gender-based violence. And also what are routes you can go when you have experienced something like this. And there are fantastic organizations in all the communities that we work in that deal with those elements, from awareness all the way up to how do I get to a police station? How do I ensure that I'm safe as a woman? And how do I ensure that my family in that sense is safe as well? I have a particular vested interest in it because I have a young colored daughter who I want her to grow up in a world where she can be secure in her gender and race, without feeling, one, that she is set behind from a salary point of view just because of who she is, but secondly also that she can have secure relationship with people of the opposite sex.
No, that's absolutely fundamental. So perhaps before we move on to the sports guys, Adrian, if you could maybe paint the picture of the Solidarity Fund, considering that we are slowly opening up the economy in the country. What is the future of the Solidarity Fund? Does it end when COVID ends?
So, I mean, I think this is something that is being discussed at the fund. The Solidarity Fund was set up as a crisis intervention, and I think the funders and the people that committed the time and the organizations were everyone stepping up in the way that you described earlier. I mean, it's been incredible to see South Africans, across the country in communities, in their families, people stepping up and supporting their communities and supporting the country. And we've had that at the fund. And it's very much been a big national effort around responding and dealing with this crisis. So I think as we move towards the end of this crisis, I think there's a process of thinking about, what does the future look like for the fund? I mean, I think the fund has been a very interesting organization in the sense that it has brought together all the different sectors of society to say, we're going to create an institution that can get things done, that can make real impacts on society at scale really quickly. And I think that's been a really valuable experience for all the different sectors who've been involved in it. And so I think the thing is, what is the next phase? And it is going to look different from the crisis phase. I think the crisis phase that we've been in, which we probably have another kind of 6 to 8 weeks of, but we're going to be with coronavirus for some time. This is not a virus which is going to disappear in the coming months, and possibly it could even be, a number of years. And I think, the big one of the big elements of the fund, which I think will really need to continue, is the behavioral change campaign and the citizen solidarity campaign. And this is why I think the solidarity walk is so important. And, the essence of that campaign is it's about social solidarity. It's about the reason why we do these things, the reason why we wear masks and practice good hygiene and so on. It's not for ourselves. It's to support our communities, our friends, our families. It's about social solidarity. It's about social cohesion, actually, in South Africa. It's about what we do for each other. It's the Ubuntu ethos, which kind of sits at the center of that campaign. And that's something that I think we need to, as the fund, continue to drive and be involved in for some time to come. So I think there will be that, and there may be other elements that will be important. But I think the crisis element and this major kind of effort, 24/7 effort that's gone into kind of responding to this crisis, I think that will evolve into something different.
No, sounds exciting. Thank you very much, Adrian and Alef. I think that was a very informative conversation, and good luck for the rest of the crisis period as well as the future of the Solidarity Fund.
Thanks, Palesa. Thanks.
Thanks, both of you. Found that extremely enlightening and very informative. Palesa, wonderful. I'm going to hand back to you in a second, but just a note to the participants. The chat function is disabled, but the Q&A function is working if you have any questions. If not, you can email them through, or you can put them through on WhatsApp if you have contact with me via WhatsApp. But the Q&A function is active. Thank you very much, everyone. Over to you, Palesa.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you. So I think now is a good time to get into the Solidarity Walk. And for the meantime, before we chat to Lucas and Andre, you can follow the Solidarity Walk on at SA Chamber UK on Instagram, and at South African Chamber UK on Facebook. And of course, you can also register on www.southafricanchamber.co.uk. And it's quite easy to see what the different activities are in terms of the walk itself, and where you can walk, run, jog, hike, and all of that stuff. So welcome, Lucas. Welcome, Andre. It's an absolute honor to speak to both of you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and nice to see you, Andre.
Thank you, Lucas. How are you doing?
Yeah.
When was the last time you guys saw each other?
Must have been a while ago.
Yes, before great beard. That's how long it's been.
I know, it's been a while.
Okay, cool. Well, we're very happy to be what unites you today. Speaking of unity, Lucas, maybe let's ask you, what is the reason that you've decided to take part in the #Solidarity Walk?
Thanks, Palesa. I think for me, I've been inspired, but by the collaboration of people and trying to help one another with different events. And I think this is a very important time, for us, especially in this country, to come together, because I believe that together as a unit, we can manage to reach our goal, especially in doing the best we can for the less fortunate, with the challenges that we're facing, which for me, it always inspires me, and I've always wanted to get involved and contribute towards the best of this country.
That's wonderful. Andre, on your side, why are you taking part? And also, what is your message to the South African diaspora? Because as we know, the Solidarity Walk is actually an opportunity for South Africans who are based across the globe to take part in raising funds through the Solidarity Fund. And it's not just South Africans in South Africa, but it's actually appealing to all South Africans across the globe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Palesa. I mean, I just want to piggyback on what Lucas said. It's inspiring to see companies in South Africa jumping on the train and helping each other. And, and obviously myself being in the UK and not being on the ground in South Africa to help, the only thing I can do where I am right now is to support the cause. And then once again, I'm proudly South African, although I live in the UK. I'm proudly South African. And I think this is the way I can give back to my country, a country that's given me so much throughout my career. And it's now time for me to support. It might not be financially, but you know what? It could be just being there, like Adrian said, or Alef said, it's maybe helping someone carrying a bag, or just, showing someone that you care, and helping each other. I think that's the main reason for myself. It's time to give back to the country. I mean, the country needs our support right now, and the people living there.
That's wonderful. And speaking of which, there's a whole social media drive that is part of the hashtag Solidarity Walk. How would you encourage people to take part in terms of creating awareness for this walk online?
I mean, so what I've been doing is, I've been, engaged in a lot of social media platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and that's pretty much there's probably a countless other platforms of social media that you could use as well. But those were the ones that I've used. I've used my personal accounts as well. I've reached out to the school where I'm a head coach at. I'm talking to the children there. I'm trying to talk to their parents, trying to get engaged and ask them to get onto the Twitter accounts and retweet what I've been tweeting out. And then also at the rugby club that I'm associated with, we're talking to the players there and just make them aware of it. They might not be South African, but you don't have to be South African to support the cause. So I'm trying to reach out to them as well and show them, what I'm involved in, and help them, and my message, sorry, to answer you as well on the first question, my message to the people is to get on board, and like the rugby players used in the World Cup last year, stronger together, and so let's use that and let's get together. And if we're together, we'll be stronger.
Absolutely. Stronger together, definitely. Lucas, back to you. This is a distance between Cape Town and Beitbridge, which is about 4,000 kilometers. Now, I don't know how fit you are still, but what's your plan in terms of how you're going to clock these kilometers? And what's your message for other people to take part?
Palesa, I think we are privileged and fortunate that we can have that influence in our communities, as individuals, coming from teams and different backgrounds, to be able to encourage, because I know it's a long distance. I don't know if my knees, after 12 years of playing football, they will actually carry me. But that's not the issue. I think the issue is even deeper than that. It's a sacrifice for all of us. For the betterment of not just us, but for the up and coming generation, because there's a lot to learn. Through what we're doing, through the events, and to be honest, as Andrew was saying, now we have the platforms in terms of Twitter, and where we can actually chat and reach a greater population, to encourage them to get involved, and not just to get involved. It's about keeping fit. It's about making sure that it becomes part of your life. Walking, whether you walk, whether you you run, because I've seen a lot of people now that they are very health conscious, and to be honest, that encourages me and inspires me more, and make sure that with the stature that I have through football, I can able to go, especially when I travel around, because I do a lot of work with the community. And that's a great opportunity for me to share with them, the community, what we're doing, which will better themselves and better the community, as a contribution, as an individual. But yes, I'll probably be walking. We'll try. I'm going to try and walk. I'm going to try and hike. I'm going to try and do all these a few things, combined, and surely that hopefully will encourage and inspire mostly, because I think Adrian and Alef, we are listening to them. It's very inspiring. I just want to start doing it now, and knowing that how much money it's gonna need, to make sure that the challenges that we're facing, we've managed to conquer them, which for me, I'm greatly and I appreciate that I'm involved, with the likes of Adrian and Alef and Adrian, for the great cause.
Fantastic. And I think it would be great if you could get your community together and all your friends and, have, with social distancing, of course, and practicing, safe distance and wearing masks. But, if you could get everybody together to do all this and to take part in all of this, I think using your brand, like you say, is such an important asset that you have that would contribute a great deal to the Solidarity Walk. So I definitely look forward to seeing what you're going to be doing on social media whilst I'm hiking somewhere. Hopefully I'm going to see where. Andre, you're a Safa. You are living in the UK. What is the mood of South Africans in the UK? And do you think that this is something that is exciting for them to take part in? How are they feeling about South Africans and the advent of COVID-19 in South Africa?
No, definitely. I think there's a lot of South Africans. I'm reluctant to talk on their behalf because I haven't spoken to all of them at once. But the mood that I'm picking up is, they live here in the UK, but they want to help, but they sometimes don't know how to. And I think this is a great opportunity to show them that this is their support, although they're not physically on the ground helping. And like I said previously, maybe not financially, but this is just a way to show the people in South Africa we care. Yes, we would have potentially maybe liked to be there and walk with our family members in South Africa, for those who still have family members there. But unfortunately, we're here now. So we got to try and create a mini South Africa in the UK and get together. And it's all over the country. There's a good big group in London. I've been looking at my Twitter page that people are trying to get together in London and walk in the parks there. I know I'm going to be walking in a place around where I live in the on the border of Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire. It's a reserve called Idle Valley Reserve. It's very similar to South Africa. It looks like South Africa. It reminds me of South Africa, and I always take my family there. So we go walk there every so often to remind us of this could potentially be South Africa where we're walking. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think the mood here, people want to get involved. They want to help. So they want to walk and be part of something and be part of something bigger. And like Lucas said, it's about the future. We always say, you hear people say, oh, I survived World War II or I survived this crisis. If you look back at it, our kids in 20 years' time, they're going to look back and say, we survived COVID. And that's the legacy that we would like to leave behind and say that we were part of that. We survived it. We got through it. We helped people survive, and that's the what we would like to achieve. And I think a lot of people here in the UK, although they're not in South Africa, I think they would like to be part of something. And that's the only way they could be part of something is by joining the walk and show their support that way.
Yeah. Fantastic. It sounds exciting. It sounds like it's a great place to be in terms of beginning this conversation, at least as we come out of COVID-19 quite slowly. It's a great time to start up conversations with South Africans again that are based all over the world. And it's a great time to unite again, just like we do as South Africans. Every time we are faced with a crisis, we do come together and we do ensure that somehow we win. And I think in this case, we're really looking forward to raising a lot of money through the Solidarity Fund to continue that important work that Adrian and Alef mentioned earlier on. So at this point, I think I'd like to thank you, Andre. Thank you very, very much for your time and such an interesting conversation, as well as you, Lucas. And maybe we'll see you on the streets here in South Africa, because, of course, this is not just for South Africans living abroad, it's also for South Africans in South Africa to take part in as well. So
thank you so much.
Thank you, Palesa.
Absolutely. At this point, I'm going to hand over back to Sharon, who will be going through some of the questions, and giving you an opportunity to ask your questions. Thank you.
Button disappears when you want to unmute yourself. It has a horrible habit of doing that. Thank you very much. That was so inspiring, guys. Lucas and Andre, it was absolutely wonderful to hear about how you are going to be engaging in the walk, how you are actually getting people engaged with you. And we have seen your presence on social media, and I'm very grateful for the contribution towards it as we drum up the people. Please make sure people register, because otherwise they won't get the instructions of how to log their miles and their kilometers, if that's what they're doing instead. Adi and Alef, fantastic insights that you have given us. Really appreciate that. A couple of the comments I just want to raise that have come up on the Q&A. One was a comment about apathy. How do we spur on our fellow South Africans into action? Well, Andre and Lucas, I think you did a pretty good job of that, as noted by the person who has made the comment. Adi and Alef, from your point of view, from the Solidarity Fund's point of view, how do you think we're going to address the issue of apathy? And are you seeing it? Alef, I know you made reference to how people on the ground are actually being very helpful.
Perhaps I could start, Sharon. I mean,
Yes.
I think there's been, an extraordinary response on the ground in South Africa. I mean, we've had contact with, many hundreds of community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, initiatives that have just started up, particularly around feeding and food relief. I mean, there's been an incredible response of South Africans. I think that this is something that we need to continue to drive, though. I mean, this is not... meeting these challenges, the humanitarian challenges in particular, is going to require all South Africans working together. And I think that, the work that Lucas and Andre are doing and other, celebrity, high-profile individuals, I think is a very important part of that. I mean, we're obviously very focused on it with the Citizen Solidarity campaign and encouraging citizens to step up. And that's very much a kind of an appeal for people to get involved, to be part of the process of combating COVID-19, both in terms of what they can do in their own individual capacities, but also, in their communities.
Okay. Alef, was there anything you want to add to that?
Okay, absolutely. And I think when we started with the relief program for the Solidarity Fund, what we were extremely encouraged about is that within the time frame of a week, we had about 200 volunteers helping, from Boy Scouts to corporates to our own employees and our own beneficiaries, for that matter. And that was really, really encouraging to see. And another thing I want to mention on it is, because this is related to the UK, we have an annual event from a UK point of view, where this year there's a sporting event taking place. It's called Spirit of Belron, which is one of our corporate donors. But they are doing a 40,000 kilometer across the world type of event, where people are running and cycling and swimming and all the like. Wow. And again, the apathy that you see by people just being involved to sacrifice their own time, to sacrifice energy, and to sacrifice finances for the greater good of the South African people, and in this case, obviously to sponsor Afrika Tikkun's work in our communities. So we see a lot of it happening, not just in South Africa, but also in the UK and around the world.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to Lucas and Andre in a moment. We've got some special requests of you that I'm going to pose to you in a moment. But Eddie, can we just have a look at some of the numbers? We mentioned the amount of funds that has come into the Solidarity Fund, and you talk about 280,000 something. There's not a very strong correlation to that, and I know you said there's some website updates that are due to come through. Could you just give us a little bit more detail there, and also some idea of when we're going to be seeing that on the website?
Yeah, so I mean, let me just run through some of the high-level numbers, Sharon, because I think John had a question about 24,000 food parcels and where's all the money gone. So these are the high-level numbers. We've spent 905 million rand on PPE, 363 million rand supporting the national testing programs, 280 million rand supporting the procurement of ventilators or CPAP machines and ventilators, 405 million rand on supporting provinces with essential medical equipment, 295 million rand on food relief. So the 280,000 families that were supported in the first round with food parcels, that was across all 9 provinces, that was 120 million rand that went to that. The additional amounts that I mentioned earlier, the additional 100 million rand that's been allocated for the 700 rand vouchers that will go to 135,000 families, and the 75 million rand that we've allocated for 35,000 small-scale farmers for agricultural inputs for them, those are still to be implemented or being implemented as we speak. And then 17 million rand that's been spent on the gender-based violence initiatives. I mean, that's something that we're looking to expand on. In fact, the fund is dealing with a proposal at the moment that we hope to be implementing soon to step up our impact in the gender-based violence space. And then 63 million rand on the Solidarity campaign. We have had a huge amount of pro bono support on the Solidarity campaign in terms of media inserts and things like that. But you'll see from that, the vast bulk of our funding has actually gone on the health response, not on the humanitarian. We're looking to do much more in the humanitarian area, but I think we always anticipated that the bulk of our funds would go to fund supporting the national health response. So we've spent 2.3 billion rand of the 3.1 billion rand that we've raised. I think the point that's made about transparency, I think it's a valid point. We've committed to this. There's a significant amount of work that needs to be done to produce the reporting that's required to go on our website. And I think it is something that we've done 2, I think, very significant reports, both on that first food response and on the PPE procurement. But there's significant additional reports that are required, and I think that's a fair challenge. I mean, it's not something that we are shying away from at all. We just need to commit resources to it. I can't give you a date as to when that will go live, but absolutely, this is all going to be completely disclosed. I mean, there's nothing to hide around any of this stuff, and I think it's this is the point that John makes is 100% valid. I mean, I mentioned earlier we've had hundreds of thousands of South Africans giving to us. We've had huge commitment from companies and individuals, and we have an obligation to make sure that that's all transparent and completely accept that until all the money has accounted for. I mean, I think there's very detailed accounting on the website as to where all the money's come from. I mean, every single donation is disclosed there, apart from the kind of very small ones. Obviously, we can't disclose all 300,000 of them, but certainly all the large donations are fully disclosed. And we will have detailed reporting around all of these items that I've just mentioned and the additional disbursements that are made in the next 4 to 6 weeks, because we anticipate that we would have spent significantly down on the 3 billion rand within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank you, Eddie. I think that gives all of us a lot more comfort in terms of the numbers and the breadth and the depth to which that has all been dispersed. To move over to our sporting heroes, in the UK, the Chamber has got a number of chapters, and these are very, very active. And there's been a request from the islands. We have chapters in Guernsey, Jersey, and also on the Isle of Man as well, where there are large populations of South Africans. And there's a particular thanks to you for the good word you have spread so far and the energy that you've been given us. Is there any special word to the islands, but equally to our other chapters outside of London, in the Midlands, in the North, in the East, in the West? We've got a number of them. And please, is there something you can do to get sure that the islands and the chapters and the regions and your football club and et cetera, are all going to come and join us?
Well, I guess, first of all, we'll have to get a boat or a canoe across to the islands to be part of them. Unfortunately, I think logistics could potentially be a problem to try and get everybody in the same place. Then obviously social distancing is the other issue. But I think, if everybody can just show their support on the social media platforms out there, I think, and register, it's not a big amount that you have to pay to register. That's one way of showing your support. And then just log the miles and log the kilometers and footsteps. I think that's the only way that we could reach out to those people. I just potentially would like to say to them, I'm challenging them to 10 miles per day. That's my challenge to everybody. So hopefully everybody can join me on that. I want to do a total of 30 miles at the end of the weekend. So I'm going to try and do 10 miles every day. So hopefully somebody can join me on that. And then just to bring back, I think if we nominate people to challenge, I think that's another way to get people involved instead of just making it a general suggestion. I think if we could potentially nominate people and call them out and put them on the spot and say to them, right, you think you're so good? Right, here's the challenge. Let's walk. I think that's another way, do it with your friends, do it with your family members, do it with your colleagues. Is calling them out, not just spreading the word and generalize and say to them, hey, please join us. No. Call them out and put them on the spot, and they will react, because nobody likes to be on the spot, and everybody at the end of the day loves a challenge.
Andre, wonderful words. Lucas, anything to add to that? I know we're not swimming to the islands, and I think the islands are all locked down to all of us. We couldn't go there, and if we wanted to go there, they won't let us in because they're all COVID-free. So the islands are actually in a position they don't have to worry about social distancing and safe activities. Words from you.
Yeah, I think I'll concur with Andre. I think social media plays a huge part, especially when you're talking about islands. Yes, through our career, we've made friends, and we've made friends all over the world. And the only time we can actually get them involved is to speak to them through Zoom and encourage them to do the same. But again, we've seen on social media, how the word can spread very quick in terms of, clapping for our nurses and our doctors, and we've seen how much posts, and it shows that people have taken that initiative to themselves and the responsibility to do that, especially if we communicate, with the world through this social media. And for sure, I will be in touch with some of my teammates from Leeds. Andre, 10 miles, Jesus, not kilometers, miles. I'm gonna try as well and challenge some of our local players as well, because I think this is all our challenge, and surely I think though our friends, from the islands, they will be obviously acknowledge the commitment from everybody else and join in. Into this hashtag solidarity walk, and make sure that they come in numbers and together to show that we can actually, defeat, this pandemic.
Thank you so much, guys. It's really rewarding. Online, we've got a challenge going on that the Southwest chapter is challenging the islands to see who's going to make the largest amount of miles within our chapters. So there's a challenge going on there already. So thank you. You've got some energy going already. And Andre, I take you up on that. 10 miles a day, I'm up for it. I've got my local village involved. And the best I've offered them is if they come and do the last 5 with me on the Monday, they've got burry rolls and a drink. beer,
Brilliant.
champagne, wine, whatever it is, we'll get them together, and we'll get the local Brits in my village to get as excited with us, because so many of them travel to South Africa on a regular basis because they all love the country as much. One last question I'd like to ask Adi, but probably more Alef, I think this might be more from your point of view, is we all talk about people getting sick. We talk about people physically having the COVID virus itself or worrying about getting it. But there's the whole, not so much the humanitarian side, it's the mental health side. How are people going to, or how can you guys on the ground, through the Solidarity Fund or just through Afrika Tikkun, how can you help the mental health aspect of people who are holed up in a flat or in a township or wherever it might be, or worried they're going to lose their job or have lost their job?
Sharon, that's an excellent question. I'm going to use our own example, our own organization as an example, if I may. So in our own organization, we have had 2 people pass away in the last 3 months. We've had people on intensive care, and quite a few people who have contracted the virus, including myself. I was asymptomatic. But what it does in an organization, it on the one hand creates an incredible sense of unity, but on the other hand, it also creates uncertainty about one's own mental health, and particularly also, if you're young, about your family members who are in the risk categories, isn't it? So what we've provided is immediate access to counselors, so to therapists, to social workers, through the like, and have necessarily been able to give mental support and emotional support to both our staff members and the community alike. Where then the question came is, who is going to assist the counselors, right? Because those who are doing such important work with our staff members and beneficiaries. And so we have psychologists who are offering their services either pro bono or at a very reduced rates, who have also offered to help our counselors and our social workers with the emotional and mental support. And secondarily, I think when it comes to people who've lost their job, it's keeping our programs alive, ensuring that we give them emergency relief on the one hand, but also don't lose sight of the fact that we need to do something about the other crisis, which is around unemployment, in order to create more long-term sustainability of our communities.
Thank you. Adrian, I'm going to pose you 2 questions for quick answers on each, and then we're going to come back to Lucas and Andre. If you could think of 3 words you would like to use to discuss this initiative as our closing point. But Adi, to you, a question around how do communities access the Solidarity Fund for help if they are in need? What is the process, and are there any barriers or anything? And the other one was, there was something that was directly related to it. I'll come back to you. So if you ask that one in the meantime, I'll come back. I'll find the other question that I wanted to ask you. Oh, yes, the other one was, to what extent does government have an influence on the decisions you take of where the funds get used?
Okay, I just tried to, I've been trying to type some of the answers to the questions. I don't think we'd get to all of them. But, in relation to, not-for-profits that are working across the country, doing a range of different work, often work which complements the fund, there's been a huge crisis of funding and resourcing and support for not-for-profits in South Africa. And this is just not something that we have the capacity or the ability to respond to. It's a problem which is just too big for the fund. And so, we also don't have the capacity to deal with thousands of unsolicited grant requests from, we get them all the time, and we just don't have the ability to do that. So our working with civil society has been very and not-for-profit organizations has been very targeted and directed in relation to the 3 pillars that we work in. So particularly in relation to the humanitarian response and the food effort, we worked with, in that first food relief effort, we worked with the big national NGOs that we were working with over 400 local community-based organizations to help, execute on that, on the food parcel delivery program. And in our communication program and the Citizen Solidarity program, we've also worked with, NGOs across the country to help, amplify the message. But it's very directed, so it's a specific program, and then there's a call for proposals around a very specific set of activities that is part of a strategic pillar and intent of the fund. So we're not able to support organizations, across the, NGOs across the country, and that, That's not part of our mandate. In relation to the question that you asked about
government influence on your decisions.
Government influence. I mean, this is something that's also often kind of very misunderstood because we have two government ministers on the board, and because the president announced the formation of the fund, everyone, thinks this is a government fund. I mean, the government has no influence at all in our disbursement decisions. I mean, we do work in the health response, and I mentioned this on the chat. We do work with the National Department of Health to understand where are the greatest needs, because obviously we don't want to create our own health response and be making decisions ourselves about, we think we should be building, a field hospital in the Eastern Cape, because we have no line of sight as to where are the biggest needs in the health system and what needs to be directed where. Both what are the biggest needs and where are they? And because that's obviously also shifting as time goes on. So we get that input from them, but our disbursements process is a process that's entirely independent of government. There's no engagement with government at all in our internal processes around what disbursements we make. So, there's no influence that's brought to bear on how we choose to spend our money.
Fantastic, Adi. Thank you. That was very reassuring. I think it's a fantastic point to end from the Solidarity Fund's perspective, to lift the energy, lift the spirit and the solidarity. Lucas, Andre, would you like to start and give us 3 words to motivate everybody?
I've got a couple of 3 words. I think the first one is register and support.
Thank you.
And then the other one, I think, is together we can.
Thank you. Lucas?
Andre, that's brilliant. But I think for me, I've got the 3 words. I think one is knowledge. Obviously, we've got to understand what we're doing. And then preparation. For me, we're going to have to prepare what we're trying to achieve and how do we achieve it. And collaboration, which is, I think, for me, if we work together as a unit, and nothing is impossible. And I want to say to the people out there, register in numbers. Let's make sure we make a difference, at least in our lives, and make sure that we leave a legacy.
Thank you very much, all of you gentlemen. And Palesa, you've been absolutely a fantastic moderator, and you've made sure we've delved deep into some of these sensitive and energizing issues that we've had to deal with. You made reference to clapping for the NHS a little earlier, Lucas, and if we see what happened, Andre, you would have witnessed this with your own eyes, is what Captain Tom Moore did to capture the emotion of the country and get the world or the UK public to go viral with an average less than £25 donation average. He raised 33 million in 3 weeks. I might have my facts slightly wrong, but it's those kind of numbers. So, I mean, if you look at that in rand terms, that's 1.4 billion rand he raised in 3 weeks because people got onto the emotion and the passion of the event. So who is our icon? Who can walk around his garden 100 times in the next week or whatever it is? If anybody comes up with any additional ideas of how we can energize South Africans in the period of next weekend, that would be wonderful. Share it with us, whoever is out there. If you can think of some additional ways to help us get the story of global South Africans walking globally out to a greater market, and virally share it with everyone. And Lucas and Andre specifically, thank you. You guys have been fantastic ambassadors. And we actually have Francois Pinard joining us as an ambassador as well, which is fantastic. So he will be coming into the throes over this next week. So we'll see what challenges he can put up to all of you as well. So I do appreciate everything. We've overrun our time, which I think is my first webinar I've ever overrun by 5 minutes. And I do apologize, but the energy was so fantastic. Adi, I think you've given all of us a tremendous comfort. And Alef, I think it gave us a fantastic feeling of what has been happening on the ground and how things have actually been carried out in reality. So, gentlemen and Palesa, absolutely, thank you all so much. And to our audience, thank you very, very much. And to all those other people who are helping us in the background, of which there are many helping us on a pro bono basis. And Palesa, specifically to your firm, thank you for all your efforts, and to the PR firm that Lucas is working with, been absolutely fantastic in supporting us as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Sharon.
So thank you, Sharon. Thanks to everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alef. Thank you, Adrian.
Bye-bye,
Cheers, Andre.
Lucas.
Thanks, Andrea.